Okay. So this is Christmas, and what have you done? Another year older, and a new one just begun. So this is Christmas, I hope you have fun. The near and the dear ones, old and the young. Very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Let's hope it's a good one without any fear. So I'm not a singer, but I love that song, and hopefully it gave you a chuckle. So, hey y'all, I wanted to talk about that song, and it's funny because that song has been on my mind for weeks, and I'll just find myself randomly singing in the house, and at the same time I'm thinking or feeling like I'm not inspired to have a message to share with you all. And so it just kind of came together tonight, and I'm glad because I wanted to touch base with you all. I wanted to talk about fear. And, I know there's a particular context with that song, but let's just take the concept of fear, okay? And we're gonna run with that. And it's kind of ironic too, because I think there's some lore related to Christmas, and I'm thinking about like Scrooge in the story A Christmas Carol, right? Where he's confronted by ghosts of Christmas past. And a lot of that in that movie, A Christmas Carol, I believe that's what it's called, with Scrooge, is related to, I feel like, his conscience bothering him, okay? Because he was a very stingy person. He was very selfish. And that's certainly true. Our conscience can nag us, and it's supposed to. That's what it's for. That's what it's for, to get us to face things that maybe we don't want to face. And it's meant to propel us or instigate change, okay, within our mind and heart, and then therefore our life, and sometimes the lives of others. So our conscience has a very important part to play. But in focusing on fear, here's what I want to talk about. And I'm sorry, I feel like I have a hair stuck to my face somewhere. Have you ever in school, let me just start with this. If you can think back, okay, during your years in school, did you ever have to draw a chart or map out, like sometimes they call it a map, and I forget the type of map it's called, but it's like where you write a concept on the board, and then you draw a circle around it, and then you have like these branches or these arms or legs that come down off of it, and it can either be related thoughts or supportive thoughts, or you can kind of deconstruct a concept and get down to the root of what caused something, or what the first step of something was. It's kind of like working backwards. So what I have done is I've spent a little bit of time, and today, throughout the day, this has just kind of been ongoing in the back of my mind, because I've been really busy today. I know we're all busy this time of year, right? But fear, I think we don't really give it the attention that it deserves. And it's funny because it's almost like, it's not funny like ha-ha, but like ironic, because the news and even a lot of the modern TV shows and entertainment is very fear-based and very negative, and it can really, really impact us. I mean, even in our dreams. And I've had to cut all that off. And it's really just, I expose myself to it, through certain channels and avenues for entertainment, and that's pretty much it, right? But in general, there's a lot of fear in the things that we take in, specifically on the television. And I think that we think of fear in that way, kind of like when it's in our face and it's obvious, it's really easy to identify, feelings that may be coming up inside of us because, we're just watching a really horrible news story about a crime or something. We can kind of easily detect it in a situation like that, okay, right? And then same thing with a lot of children, have to work through fear because their imagination's just running wild, and they're worried about monsters and all this other stuff. And so there's that kind of obvious fear, especially if you're a parent, where when you think about fear itself, it kind of brings those kind of things to mind, like childhood fears. But I think there's a lot more to it, okay? And I'll drop related verses in the description of this video too after I'm done filming this. But I'm reminded of this really interesting movie that I just stumbled upon years ago. It's called Donnie Darko, and it's kind of a supernatural type movie where the veil between the spiritual realm and the physical realm is kind of thin for this main character. And there's a teacher in this movie that draws this line on the board, and she's trying to get all the students to think about fear as being the opposite of love. And she's just trying to talk through all these different real life examples and get everybody involved and to classify if something is really more on the love side of the spectrum or the fear side of the spectrum and all this. And then of course, like the main character, Donnie, he jumps up and he's like, it's not that simple. It's not black and white. You can't just, he's kind of the outspoken one, to kind of shake things up. Okay. But fear, if I'm not mistaken, in the Bible, I think it says that there is no fear in perfect love, or perfect love casts out fear. And there's a lot of really interesting Bible verses about fear. And I think that it impacts us in a very subtle way in a lot of different scenarios, and we don't catch it. And this is super important because this is just simply another tactic, and I think a much bigger one than what we give credence to, okay? Tactic from the dark side, okay? From Satan, from the devil. And I'm going to break this down a little bit, but it's just giving you something to think about, okay? So, it's like, where do I start? I wonder if you're like me. I get a flood of thoughts when I'm busy cleaning, and I'm like, I could stop and write it down, but I'd be writing for 30 minutes. And anytime I'm sitting here reading my notes, I feel like I'm not really in the flow, and it doesn't feel like a natural conversation with you all if I'm just reading my notes. And other times, if I do shorthand on my notes, then it's like I'm trying to read aloud or string together, a full, complete thought where I've only put part of it down and all this stuff. So just bear with me. I ask that you bear with me. So let me give you an example. A lot of times, anger is considered a secondary emotion, whereas I believe it's like sadness, okay? That is the true emotion underneath and the root of anger. And I could be totally wrong on this, but it's just just a tiny little breadcrumb for you to go run and do some research on if you have interest. But there's been some talk about secondary emotions, okay? Fear, though, I think that a person can make very big life-changing decisions and take very, very big, completely life-altering actions from a state of fear and not even realize that they are acting from fear, because fear can be kind of in that same sort of subtle position where there's this covering thought and emotion, or maybe many thoughts and emotions that are just kind of covering up fear, and we would label those as secondary if we have the awareness. But because we don't have the awareness, we think this is what we're acting from, all this up here on the top. But on the bottom, on the underside, okay, it's really fear that we're not allowing ourselves to recognize. And I think a lot of this is because there's stuff that we don't want to deal with, okay? It's almost like opening a can of worms. If we admit that fear is driving us sometimes, it's like we have to admit other things that we don't really want to admit. And it's just it starts like a snowball effect of, well, now I really got to face all this hard stuff that I was trying not to really face, okay? And now let me give an example. Finally, as I'm finally getting to the point here. Some people, you may have known people like this in your past. Hopefully this hasn't been you. I'm very fortunate that I can say for sure this has not been me. But some people cannot ever be alone, like single, okay? And it's like they can, and this has been sort of something I haven't really given a lot of thought to, but I've known people like this. And I found it kind of odd and wondered, I wonder why they just go from one relationship to another. It's like they're already in another relationship before this one ends and things like that. Or either there's like no gap. They've suddenly met someone else as soon as this one's over. And it's kind of been a mystery to me. But now that I'm older and I've lived more and I have experienced more, okay, I think that fear is a driving factor there. I think that there are people who just can read into a relationship, and this can even be a friendship too. It doesn't have to be romantic, but they can read into a relationship with a person. Checking on my blue light here. We should be good with my mic. And they can think that, say this other person that they're in a relationship with, or even a friendship, whatever. Say this other person's going through something, okay? A midlife crisis. Maybe they've lost someone passed away that they were very close to, and they're, dealing with that. Whatever it is, hormonal changes, it could be anything at all, okay? Well, if this other person is observing these changes in behavior in their partner or in their friend from the wrong position or perspective, then fear can come into the situation, and they can start thinking all kind of things. They can think stuff like, oh my gosh, they're going to leave me. Or maybe this person hasn't been ethical, okay? And maybe they're thinking, oh my gosh, they know I've cheated on them, or they know, oh my gosh. So but it's still fear, that enters the situation. So there's a lot of different reasons it could. But it can drive that person to hurry up and secure another relationship or group or whatever it is, okay, to replace this person. Because usually if you're in a relationship, especially with somebody, it's not just you and them, there's family involved too, okay? So a lot of times, if a person especially is living like a double life, or they're whatever it is, they'll take shelter sort of in the cloak of an entire other family that they get involved with. That becomes, they feel like, I can imagine anyway, they feel like, well, they're protected now, in terms of how they are viewed in the community, their status. It's like, well, look, they're now part of this family, so the problem can't be with them, or whatever it is. So there's so many different reasons, so many different reasons. And maybe this person is an honest person. Maybe they haven't been leading a double life or cheating or whatever it is, and they think that their other person, their partner, their spouse, whatever is, they see changes in them, okay? And this doesn't have to always mean that it's simply a problem of a lack of communication, of just talking to one another, because sometimes, they may not believe what the other person says. If the other person's like, hey, I just need time alone because I'm just trying to sort through some my childhood stuff, or what, and they might be like, yeah, sure. So, excuse me. Pardon me. But there can be all kind of different reasons that they don't even believe the person. So sometimes communication really doesn't work. It takes two, and it takes two being willing and honest. Okay? But what can happen is, let's say this person is an honest person, but they just are making assumptions. And many, many times in my past videos, I've said, we really shouldn't be making assumptions. Okay? It's hard not to, but it's best not to. Well, if they make the assumption, I'm going to be left or whatever, and they have just an extreme fear of abandonment or whatever it is, they can go and, is it preemptively, I guess, find somebody else, and come to find out their person, their spouse or whoever it is, their friend, it had nothing to do with them. They weren't running out on them. They had a genuine illness, or they had some stuff to work through, or whatever it was. Well, now what? Now there's been a big mess created. Or if this person finds out, then it's destroyed. The relationship's probably forever destroyed. And so, fear. And I'm thinking about people who are cruel, okay? A lot of times, we'll label people like this, narcissists, and I don't know if that's really accurate or not, but people who have sadistic tendencies, okay? People who are like grown people who are bullies, and they get a kick out of messing with somebody, all right? If you really think about it, fear is driving that. And it's not to make an excuse for it. But I'm just sharing my thoughts with y'all, okay? Y'all know I'm not a professional or an expert by any means. But they're clearly super committed to, whether consciously or not, they're clearly super committed to and entrenched in this really unethical, maladaptive coping mechanism. And why is that? Well, there's something that hasn't been addressed or completely healed or purged from their mind and heart, because maybe they didn't allow the time to process everything properly, emotionally, and all this other stuff. And it's hard, because sometimes I think, I don't ever really want to blame anybody, but sometimes I think they could have, but other times, maybe if this is a child or whatever, if their environment's very unstable and, just everything can be clouded in a person's situation, okay? Especially if it's a child. And if they don't have anybody leading them and guiding them and walking with them through all this stuff, then they don't even know how to process, or that they should process. They may think they're doing the right thing by stuffing things down and trying to forget about it and moving on, when really it's still there and it's never been addressed. And then, maybe their coping mechanism may have started out innocent, but it just grew into something, that a lot of people would consider evil. I don't know. But I think that when you look through the lens of fear, I think that fear is somewhere buried underneath all of this stuff. And it could be related to their conscience. They could be adding to that through these poor decisions and treating people poorly. It could be adding to a guilty conscience and the fear of facing that, which, through the Christian lens, Jesus has the solution for that, right? But even beyond that and before that, there could be a severe fear that was instilled in someone as a child, and they may have felt very disempowered and helpless, and depending on what they experienced, whatever traumas it was, and it could have just resulted in them trying to create this super ego, okay? This false self to squash the fear. And so, but fear, I just invite you, if you have interest, if you're a deep thinker and you like to get to the bottom of things like I do, and you're a truth seeker and all this stuff, I just invite you to consider fear being at the root of a lot of bad stuff, whether it's, through the years and over time and as a person has grown or whatever, whether it has manifested in, just poor decisions or big mistakes or just very maladaptive or even evil behaviors or whatever it is. I think that the fear has many faces. Let me just say that. I think that fear, and that's why we don't detect it, because it's a primary instigating factor, and all these other secondary results is what we see. And so when we're trying to just address this stuff that's on the forefront, okay, of what a person is displaying and how they're operating in this world, what we're really doing is we're treating symptoms. We're just addressing symptoms. We're not getting to the core root issue way, way, way down, and it's the same way with our medical system, treating the symptoms. But I just encourage you to think through that. And fear can hold us back. It can hold us back from a lot of things. I think sometimes there can be a lot of awesome possibilities in life that maybe just barely start coming our way, whatever it is, something good. And for various reasons, it could be just a history of things falling flat or going bad, or it could be paranoia, or it could be any number of reasons. That can scare us sometimes. If good things start to come our way, we can, immediately sometimes respond from a place of fear, and I think unconsciously sabotage good things. Because then at least I'm just thinking through this, right? I don't think I do this. I hope I don't do this. I don't consciously anyway. But I can imagine that, I think that probably works in that situation in conjunction with projection, because I think if a person is unknowingly sabotaging something good coming their way, they're going to probably see this other person or something external out here as the cause of why it fell flat, and never that it was really something within them. And a lot of people talk about energy, and I absolutely think that's real. I do. And sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. I'm thinking about a new book I have that talks about energy within us and out here in the world and how it all kind of ties together. I think that there are subtleties to the way we respond to people and situations that are much louder and more impactful than we could ever realize. And these little micro responses to people and situations may be coming from something deep down inside of us that we're not even conscious of. And then we don't understand why this person walked away, or why we didn't get the job, or, whatever it is. We have no idea. We're genuinely just flabbergasted. And it's because there's something unaddressed within us that's causing responses to come out of us, because we are vessels. Even in the Bible, we're described as vessels. And so when you start to see this whole life experience, human life experience, as spiritual first and foremost, then all of this stuff it's like taking the blindfold off of your eyes. It's like you get the eyes to see, and then it all makes sense through the spiritual lens. Excuse me. Are we going to get everything right all the time, 100% of the time? No, we're not. Okay, we're always going to make mistakes. We're human, all this stuff. Okay, fine. But can we work to become more conscious of how we're engaging with reality? And can that have better results? Can that yield better results? Yes, I think that's true. And if you think about it, even in the Bible, Jesus was, teaching everyone that if you shall, I think this is when he was talking about moving mountains, and he was performing all these miracles, and he was saying, you can do these things that I do, you can do these and more. And it's almost like that just went in one ear and out the other with people, based on how I read it. Very few people, I think, really, they were in such awe of everything that he did that I don't think they really believed that they were capable of that, even though he said that. And his contingency in telling these people that, the miracles they could perform, was that if you believe and shall not doubt, there can't be any doubt at all. And I think sometimes we can hope for something to such a degree, or want something to such a degree, that I think that doubt can sort of be alluring, I think I'm saying that right, because if it falls apart, the big if, right, then we can be like, oh, well, I kind of thought it would anyway. Sort of like a softer landing in that way. You know what I mean? I think we can feel like we're not going to be let down as bad or whatnot if we sort of expected it to start from. But in the meantime, what all's coming out of us? What kind of fruits, subtle fruits, are coming out of us to actually make it fall flat, and we didn't realize we were acting in that way. So, and shall not doubt. And doubt is rooted in fear. It's rooted in fear. And perfect love casts out fear. So see, this is big. This is big. And I know we're about to head into a brand new year. And somebody wrote on a Christmas card this year, they really hope that 2027 is like a wonderful year. And I'm thinking, I know it was a mistake. It was really sweet. And I'm not picking on this person or anything, but I'm thinking, yeah, and I hope 2026 is too, Sometimes I think we can get little messages like that and think it's a sign, like, ooh, maybe that's, God speaking through that person, through that mistake, and maybe there's something big going to happen in 2027. I'm excited. That's how I am sometimes. But, yeah. But we're about to go into this new year, right? And a lot of people like to choose a word to kind of meditate on, right? Sort of to be their word for that year. And there's been a couple of different podcasts that I've been listening to recently that both of them, or maybe even three of them, 2 or 3 of them, were talking about. There's a difference in talking about God's word, okay, and all the concepts around it, and just talking it all through, and doing and acting from it, but specifically from a position of love, letting your fruits, yielding your fruits, like, literally putting your love to use in the world, And because again, the Bible says we're the hands and feet of Jesus, right? And so that's really been on my heart too lately. And I think that we certainly need to have discernment there, because there's going to be people who are going to try to exploit that, your giving nature, of course. And even if you just naturally are a giving person, it's like there sometimes with these kind of people can be a lack of faith, and they can feel like, they're not going to receive anything good if they don't coerce you, or if they don't guilt trip you, or use your beliefs against you and try to make you feel guilty because you're not being the kind of Christian you should be, and they're telling you how you should be a better Christian, and which includes benefit for them and stuff like that. So yeah, and it's never good if you're on the receiving end of pressure in any way, coercion, and guilt tripping, and it's just never a good thing. And if you've been through that for many years, you have to get to a point where you just learn how to set boundaries and stuff for your sanity. And that's not a selfish thing, regardless of what people might say. So you can't pour from an empty cup, as they say, right? I think I've actually said from an empty bucket before, but I'm from the South, so yeah. I think even, and I was thinking about this saying too the other day, it'll give you guys something, especially if you're not from the South, it'll give you something to laugh at. There's this Southern saying that says, well, they're getting too big for their britches. Getting too big for your britches. And I think even that's just kind of a way to describe somebody whose ego has become so overinflated. Again, fear's behind that too. It's behind all of it. It's behind so much. I don't want to sit here and say all of it, but it's behind so much. And it can instigate us to act in ways that these are the secondary thoughts and feelings that produce certain outcomes and actions, okay? And it can prompt us to act from a place of self-preservation, from a place of where we might even think that we are being careful and trying to make things go in a certain way to avoid a particular kind of risk, and we can actually be acting in a different kind of risky way and not realize what we're putting at risk by doing this over here instead of just facing the fear. It can cause us to have another term I've heard is poverty mindset, come from a spirit of lack with everything that we do, all of our decisions. It can just really impact us. And I think that if we're going to try to have the right kind of mindset as we head into this new year, okay? Yes, I think that focusing more on the doing part of letting love be an action is an awesome thing, as opposed to only talking about it, right? But I think that we need to approach everything from a balanced perspective, absolutely. But self-reflection, I just want to encourage you. Just, if you have some time, you don't have to journal about it. You could just be thinking about it while you're driving down the road or whatever it is. You're cooking dinner, whatever it is, And sometimes I have my biggest revelations that way, just kind of as I'm going through my day, doing stuff I need to do. And I'm kind of thinking, I'm marinating, like I like to say, on certain things in my mind, and I can just have these revelations pop up, and it's very helpful. Little puzzle pieces that kind of sometimes address the current situation, and then I have this new lens now where now these other things make sense too because I've had this revelation. So yeah, self-reflection. Think about fear. If you want to draw out some maps and kind of connect it, to secondary thoughts and feelings and emotions and actions and consequences, and look at the alternatives, look at the opposite. Like if I had not had fear, if I had been able to truly embody perfect love, which casts out fear, and if I was able to act from a place of no doubt, genuinely, which is hard. It's hard for all of us, but what might have the outcome been? Would it have been so awesome that it would have even been labeled or considered a miracle? I'm just thinking about living like Jesus and what he called us to do. And this is the time that we celebrate his birthday. Whether it actually is his official birthday or not, it's the time that we designate to celebrate his birthday. What better honor? And there's so many ways we can honor him. I'm not trying to say I've got the best way to honor him, but I'm just thinking, I'm sharing my thoughts with you all. But to meditate on his teachings and do our best. Now, we have to know we're always going to fall short, but that's okay. He knows our heart. He knows we're trying, but what if we just really try? What if we just really, really try to have no fear, to cast out fear and doubt? Then what? Then what? So I hope this has been inspiring to you. I hope that it's encouraging. I hope it gets the wheels turning most of all. And I hope that you have a beautiful Christmas, whether you're surrounded by loved ones or whether you're alone. Remember, you're never alone. You have the Heavenly Father, Holy Father with you, and your spiritual family with you in spirit. You're never alone. And I just get busy if I have a little bit of downtime and I'm done cleaning and organizing my house and stuff like that. I like to get into my hobbies, I like to knit. I'm not very good at stuff. I'm kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none. That's kind of me, as evidenced by my opening song. I like to sing. I like to play piano. I haven't done it in a long time. And every year I'm like, I'm going to relearn some of the Christmas songs. I'm going to play it for you guys. And I just don't ever get around to it. But one of these days, I'm going to get back to it. I can play a pretty sweet Carol of the Bells. So I hope I can share that with you all. Maybe next year. But anyway, I just like to tinker around and do all kind of different things. And just put on some really relaxing music. I love music. Or just an encouraging podcast. But just find little moments of beauty in your life. Just little moments. And a moment can carry you through until you find the next moment. And then the next moment. And one of the most, I think, easiest, on one hand it's easy, on the other hand it's very, very difficult. But a very fulfilling way to serve from a place of love is to adopt an animal, to go to the shelter and find some animals that need to be loved and fed and taken care of. And it's very fulfilling. And I think that God sees that too, And so whatever your situation is, I hope that you can find a way to let the love inside of you flourish. Don't keep it all inside. I think that, as we are wise in letting it pour out from us, then God refills our cup, And so that's going to be kind of my mindset that I'm focused on, especially this next year, this new year. So I'll try to touch base with you all. I'm going to be pretty busy with family over the next few weeks, but I'll check in as I can. And again, Merry Christmas. And if I don't get a chance to tell you Happy New Year, and I just hope that you have a wonderful day, a beautiful day. And I'll see you again very soon.